Hey everybody, this is Seth Haynes from musiciansguide to hustling.com. Today we've got a very special guest. We've been going back and forth for a little while and trying to make this happen. Sean, I'm super psyched to have you on. Sean Perrin, everybody. Sean hosts the Clarineat podcast. He just released a new album. And Sean, there's a lot I could say about you, like everybody that comes on for an interview here. But can you just give everybody a little bit of an introduction of yourself, your background, and some of the various facets of your career?
Well, yeah, I'm a clarinet player who lives in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So up in the cold north, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did my undergrad at the University of Calgary. And then after I graduated, I had a lot of interesting playing opportunities that sort of kept me in town, including subbing with the local orchestra and just various freelancing gigs. I actually brought up or sort of resurrected some of my percussion skills and sort of started to freelance on both instruments, which has just led to a lot of really great opportunities. And so while I've been here, of course, I also do a lot of teaching, and that includes private studio teaching as well as going to schools and doing workshops with kids from the ages of about grade 6, which is 11 or 12, all the way up to end of high school. So I do well over 100 workshops like that a year. It can be pretty busy, and
Wow.
for various clients, ranging from the Mount Royal Conservatory to the public school boards to down to the Banff Center and done stuff there. So yeah, it's been pretty busy. Last year I started with the podcast. Well, I guess only 6 or 7 months ago, I got started with this podcast, and the purpose for that was because I did a lot of driving. I go out of town a lot, or I'm in the city, or going to people's houses for lessons sometimes, which I do less of now. But I was always listening to podcasts, and every month I would search for a clarinet podcast and turn up with nothing. I'd get kind of frustrated.
Right.
And then one day I was like, you know what? I should try this. I have a lot of people that I know, and I'm sure it can't be hard to reach out and do this. And little did I know it actually is a ton of work.
Right.
But I did just worked great, and it's just been going from there as far as that goes. So I just recently recorded my first CD, which was...
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. If you want, you can check that out on Spotify or Apple Music or iTunes or whatever. It's available everywhere. And
what's it called?
It's called Dream Songs.
Dream Songs. I was actually gonna ask you if you were playing percussion in the first. Is it the first track? I think it is.
The first and last track, actually, I'm playing percussion.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I turned it on. I was waiting for the clarinet, and I was like, that's odd. and then you mentioned, I play percussion. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
We can get more into the kind of the idea behind a lot of that in a minute, but generally
please.
On there, like I obviously play the clarinet, but on the first and last tracks, we play pieces together. And the reason that it doesn't have the clarinet on the first and last tracks, I'll explain a little bit, but intro into what I do and have done, and the podcast has been really great as far as networking and meeting people, and just getting to share stuff with the community. It's been a lot of fun, actually. So
awesome. So before we dive into, you just gave a great little segue into the first topic of building an audience online around a project. But before we do that, I'm interested to learn a little bit more about these workshops that you do. I actually wasn't. I read that you did this kind of stuff on your site, and I knew of it, but I didn't realize it was that much. So can you talk a little bit about what these workshops are and how they came to be? Because you said you do 100 or so a year.
It's pretty common here for people to do that, actually. There's a huge, I don't know if there's a huge community, but there's a significant community of freelancers who do these clinics. And basically what it is that we don't have, I've heard actually a lot of American schools at the middle school level, they have like a dedicated clarinet teacher. Well, we don't have that here. So what happens is that the teachers reach out into the community by various means and contact you to come in and just do sessions anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, 1 hour even sometimes, just working with their students. So the band teacher doesn't necessarily have all the skills they need to focus on just the clarinets or just the French horns or whatever. Sure. Not to mention manpower to divide their class into 10 groups. So they bring in specialists. That happens at various schools throughout the year. They do it a lot at out-of-town band camp kind of things.
Yeah.
The thing that happens at the Banff Center, that was more like a youth orchestra conference type thing. So, and I also have a festival called the Vic Lewis Festival, Music Festival, and that's where they bring in like, I don't know, 50 schools or something, and you do like just back-to-back for a couple of days. But yeah, it's just workshops with the kids, helping them refine their technique in a band setting, but just with their instrument, which is something they don't really get otherwise. It is a great way to introduce, at the end of it, your business card for private lessons.
Yeah, of course.
Or something like that. But yeah, it's really nice too because it's daytime. So I might get up at 6 a.m. and do a clinic from, I don't know, 7 until 10, and then maybe another one in the afternoon, and then I can even come home and teach privately if I want, or do a gig or whatever,
Right.
So it's a nice way to get something in the day, which is hard to find as a musician.
Yeah, that's actually really good. It's funny you mentioned that. I didn't realize that was as common as it was up in Canada, because I was talking with Chuck Dallenbach about the founder. I don't know if you're familiar with Chuck. He's the founder of the Canadian Brass.
Yeah.
So I was talking with Chuck on the site and this is a couple months ago now. But he was saying that, that's literally how the Canadian Brass, like as a group, got started. They did hundreds of school concerts around like Hamilton area, I think is what it was.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, but yeah, that's actually really interesting. I didn't realize that. I knew it was a thing, but I didn't realize it was so common, because that's definitely not the case in the States as much. It's out there, but it's not near that like scale, it sounds like.
Well, I think here it has a lot to do with just the culture of that. I wish there was a school I could go to every day and have a clarinet class. I don't know if I wish that, because I do like the changing schedule that I have. But I guess I'd like it from an education perspective. It would feel more, I don't know, like a wholesome education, because you could see them every day and track their progress and make sure they're moving at the right pace. This is sort of like a quick in, quick out. But what's not cool about it, I guess, is that you are a special guest. Like, you come in, you work with the kids for an hour and a half. They're always excited to see you. And then you leave.
Yeah, very cool.
So, but yeah, it's a really good way to. I've enjoyed being part of it a lot, and there's been some new opportunities recently in town, and the economy hasn't really affected it too much yet, but here has been pretty tough because we're an oil-based economy, and
interesting.
Otherwise, as people are losing their jobs and stuff, it for a lot of industries has really dried up, but. We're kind of like the Texas of Canada.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So let's talk a little bit about, you said, like 6-7 months ago, I was listening to podcasts and I realized there was never anything for clarinet, and you decided to start it yourself. So let's talk a little bit about your experiences of starting. So like, you had this idea one day. So like, what is the first thing you did to kind of start moving this project forward? Because I'm really interested, because a lot of, I think everybody at some point says like, somebody should do XYZ thing, and they don't often follow through and do it themselves. So like, what did it actually look like for you when you actually got started? And then, obviously you take the first steps, and then you've been able to build it up and have an audience. So like, what did that process look like?
Well, it was kind of funny actually, because I started out, one day I was just trying to revamp my website, and I was like, I wish I had a more creative name than just SeanPerrin.com and SeanPerrin.ca or whatever. And I always wanted to get Clari.net, and that's just never been available because some networking company bought it up years ago, like in the 90s. Yeah. So it still just sits there as sort of this dud domain, and it's always just sort of in the back of my mind frustrated me. And I sort of was thinking, like, what would be a neat name for clarinet? What would be neat for Clarineat? Wow, let's check this. And it was available. So I was kind of shocked, and I just bought it. But then I sat on it for about a month. I didn't really have time to do anything. This was in like November or early December. And then once the podcast idea hit me at the end of December, it just seemed natural to use the domain that I just bought. So interestingly enough, they actually came separately, ideas. But I don't know. The podcast was just something that I decided to commit myself to, and just started. It just really happened to sort of just do. I started emails right away, and I actually really shocked at the response I was getting. I mean, most of the people I contacted were interested, or if they weren't interested, it's because they were too busy, not because they didn't want to be a part of it.
Sure.
Yeah, I just started
the busy thing is tough with the most desirable people are also the busiest ones.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing for me is that originally the website it was actually quite bad. It was just like 3 links, like podcast, here's the store, and whatever else I had on there. And the traffic was just dismal. No one was clicking it. So I totally revamped it based on some user feedback. And from there, it kind of took off. And that's when I realized I needed to add a more online presence to it, like a blog and some product reviews and stuff like that. And that has been kind of the what's the word, like the meat as far as bringing traffic in the door, I think, because it can be easily shared and consumed. And then people do that first. They're going to read a blog post before they listen to a 1-hour podcast, right?
Yeah, sure.
So it kind of gets them in the door. But that wasn't my
gateway drug.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Honestly, I just started doing it, but quickly became a ton of work. It has not, let up. I've been working incessantly since about January on it.
Sure.
And,
yeah, well, I think something interesting that you said that I mean, it kind of caught my ear is that you're like, oh, when I first started, it was kind of like it was just like 3 links, and and then you went from there. But I mean, I think that's actually, I mean, from my experience, just kind of doing my own projects and have my own things going on or whatever it might be, it's like it's really hard especially for musicians. We very much have this kind of like perfectionism that's just, I mean, it's just like inherent in like our training as classical musicians to have this like kind of like high expectation of perfectionism around everything. And I think it's a really like valuable lesson for anybody out there that's listening or viewing this, that it doesn't have to be perfect to start. You just have to start.
Yeah.
And then
and it's kind of hard. Like I look back and I think, oh my God, why did I design the website like that at first? And to be honest, it's because I only had 3 links to share.
Right.
I only had like an episode, an about page, and a little mini store. Like there was nothing else at the time. It wasn't until 15 episodes had passed with 5 blog posts and 4 product reviews that I was like, wait a second, I gotta do this a bit differently, and it could look a bit different too. And all of a sudden there was something worth clicking on, and so a big thing for me, though, that's been important has been learning how to utilize SEO, search engine optimization stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really understand any of that. It's been a huge learning curve, all this stuff. I don't really have any experience in web design or anything like that. But learning about that stuff has been really a huge boon as far as getting it to, like, even when you share something on Facebook, you've got to tell it which picture it's going to put there, or it just picks random stuff. Right. And no one's going to just click on some random whatever. If it's about something.
Is your site hosted through WordPress?
Yeah, I've been using Yoast.
Cool.
Which I think everyone uses.
So what are some of the things that you've picked up that have helped with like SEO? Because I do websites for people all the time, and like the thing everybody always asks, like, how can I be first in Google? So like, but from an individual perspective, like you as the owner of a site, what are some things that you've done? I'm curious for myself that have like kind of seen results, because like
I don't know if I want to share all my
nothing
secrets
with it on my site. I do almost nothing with it. Very little.
Honestly, that's a huge problem, because Google won't even pick up your page unless you have proper meta tags and stuff, because it just goes looking for garbage and can't find anything, right? So like one thing that's really important is to make sure that you set a keyword for the page, and that you pick a keyword. I like to use Google Keyword Planner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I have like the basic stuff set up for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then what you have to do is make sure that your headings on the site use the keyword somewhere. The title of the site should use it. You should mention it at a certain density within the text, which helps. Yoast helps you to plan that. So if I'm writing posts, for example, about ligatures,
right,
I'd better mention the word ligature a lot. Not just because it actually helps you refine your content. Like you don't just put it in every third word, you just insert ligature.
Yeah.
But it helps you refine the content and go, okay, am I getting a little too far off topic? And at the end, when it makes you write that little meta tag too, it's like, can I sum up everything that I just did in 2 sentences? And if not, maybe it's not a very good article. Maybe I should refine it a little bit, So I don't know. It's been interesting to learn about some of that stuff. And And I recently was told that lynda.com has a lot of really good tutorials about this stuff. I haven't watched them yet, but I'm ranking pretty good on Google now. Like if you search Clarineat podcast, I wasn't even there, but once I started search engine optimizing, I'm 3 out of the top 5 hits.
Yeah, very cool.
Which is pretty cool. And like, I don't know why that really started happening, but I have a feeling it's because Google has content to grab. It knows what it is. You've said it very clearly for what it can be there. But honestly, maybe that's not the secret. Maybe it's just as traffic is increased. Like, it's so tough to figure out. Google changes stuff all the time.
Right. I mean, SEO stuff is so, like, it's such a fluid topic.
Another big one, though, is in your image tags, you need to put what the image is with the keyword.
So, like, for someone watching, what does that mean?
Well, you can go into something called an image attribute or alt text tag, and you can actually enter. Like, if my post is about, I'm probably going to put up a post about your website or something, right? I could insert your name into it, and then that way, when someone, if let's say your name or your blog is the keyword on my post, I don't know exactly how it works, but Google increases the relevancy of your post. Like if it is your title, your headings, your content, and your picture all have the keyword, if someone searches Seth Haynes interview, then and if my website has all those key elements on it, it's going to go, it's not smart, right? But it's going to look at that and go, well, it looks like this is pretty relevant to the search term.
Right. The right flags are there for Google to catch it and bring it up in the results.
Yeah, it's been something I've just been learning about, and I almost don't want to give away all the secrets. But I mean, honestly, they're not really secrets. They're all out there for everyone to look at, right? So, but yeah, no, that was kind of a learning curve for me, but it's been interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's super. I mean, that's super fascinating. I mean, because I think I think it's the kind of project that a lot of people would love to do. I mean, everybody, all of us at some point have like kind of gone through. Whether we're like driving down the road or like taking a shower or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I should do XYZ thing. And I'm always interested in the folks that like have the ideas and then actually like implement them and take action and just figure it out as they go. So that's super interesting. So tell me a little bit about so one of the things that I suspect the site's been really, really valuable for is a place to you've essentially created like a platform for yourself. And so what are some of the things that how has that played a role in like the actual like promotion of these various projects? So like, for example, you just released a CD.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you been able to use the site to like actually promote the CD then?
In that, it's a little hard to associate a direct connection between me and like what I do and the CD at this point. I think as much as I've kind of tried to keep it separate, it's also to the point where I'm so busy with Clarineat, I actually have taken down my personal website temporarily. And if you go to it, it leads to Clarineat. So it's funny because I'm trying to keep myself kind of out of Clarineat, but yet it is myself.
Right.
So, I plan on sort of trying to separate the two again, actually. But one of the nice things about CD, I think, is that it does sort of, it's on the store on the website, like it's kind of legitimized there. And then it's just really nice to be able to point and people in the direction of like, hey, check out my stuff, or even for guests, sometimes I'll send a thank you card and a CD, which, a CD is it's a great business card in a way to have because they're not that expensive. They're obviously, to get the first number of CDs is very expensive, but like per item, if you want to give one away promotionally, thing is not that much, especially if it's a download card. It's just a great way. They, look at something I've done, and it's really a legitimizing thing. And
yeah, totally.
And but yeah, it's hard to like direct sales and stuff. I'm not sure how many have come exactly from the website or something like that. It's tough to map out.
Sure. So talk to me a little bit about like the actual process itself of recording a CD. So like I actually recently I was giving a talk at this there's a local, it was like a music summer camp kind of thing, and so One of the got asked a question in the Q&A section, and they were like, so like, what should someone, this was asked, I think she was probably like 18, 19 years old, student, she just finished high school probably, and she was interested in like, she was a singer-songwriter, she'd been writing her own music, and she was like, so if someone wants to record an album and I don't have the resources, the money, or the whatever I need to like go into like a studio or something to record, so like, what are some things that people could do? And so if that's a separate question, what did you do? And if it's different from like kind of bootstrapping it and kind of figuring out yourself, like what are some things that other people could do as well?
Well, I mean, for my project, I pursued a rather substantial grant to actually take care of the recording.
And that's interesting. That's very cool.
Yeah, so it was two stages actually. There was a grant that covered a lot of the production costs, the pre-production. And that includes like recording time and editing and mixing and
sure.
and hiring an engineer and a producer and whatever. There was also a scholarship that I'd applied for that was more to do with jazz improv. And me and the other guy we were recording with, we had some lessons on just how to be better improvisers and get around that a bit. I mean, I was always a classically trained person, and it's so odd to have done my first project with improvisation because I was so uncomfortable with it. But
right.
Everything I did I was happy with, and I think it was partly in because of that scholarship. So there was the grant, there was the scholarship, of course a lot of my own time and energy, and in the end money had to go into it too. But another element was, in the end, I ended up crowdfunding the remainder on Kickstarter to do the actual post-production, which was the CD printing. And a couple other things, just the way that worked out. So yeah, I mean, that ended up hitting, I think it got funded to 127%, which was pretty cool.
Wow, very cool.
And, the coolest part about that actually is what I was doing through it was selling not only the CDs. So I think I got rid of, I think I sold around 100 CDs through the Kickstarter, which is, that's great.
Yeah.
And but the buzz created around that, whether it be my friends or colleagues and family, and some people actually, I think, disagreed with the idea of someone sort of soliciting their colleagues and friends. But I mean, really, in this kind of project, if your mom and your best friend aren't going to buy it, who is, right? So
absolutely.
Does it matter if they buy it on Kickstarter or from you personally? No, it's I don't know. But the cool thing about Kickstarter is that a lot of the interest generated led to the CD release concert was sold out, and it was also a live stream. So when you bought something on the Kickstarter, you actually got for certain packages, you got like tickets to the concert, or you got live stream tickets to watch the concert on live stream. And I think there's about 15 people who tuned in as far away as like New Zealand and right. like that on the live stream, which was really cool. And I CDs to like Alaska. There was one that went to Spain, something in Florida. I was like, and these people never would have found me otherwise if I just had some local event with no marketing. So and also on the release day, it shot up to number 5 on iTunes jazz charts for about an hour.
Wow, very cool.
Which was, I guess that was a huge accomplishment, but it was kind of like, and,
right. I hope you got a screenshot while I was there.
I did. But Miles Davis then quickly jumped again.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. 3
or 4 stages, like it, and like to do an album like this is a lot of money. I'm going to go into the exact numbers, but and hire that many people. I mean, if you're doing jazz or rock band with if it's a rock band, everyone's usually in it, and there's not much money flying around. But if you're doing a jazz quartet, most of those people would expect to be paid for the recording day.
Sure.
Right. And if not, they're doing you a favor, right? But it is a lot of money, and so I don't know. I found that the grant was very helpful. Obviously, really thankful to the AFA Hubbard Foundation for the Arts for that. The scholarship was great. That was kind of supplementary, I guess. And then Kickstarter worked for me. I think it has to be done right, and I don't know that I did the best job with it. So thank God it worked. But that's something else I would suggest to people, I guess. So. Yes. And your own money. You got to save a little bit yourself.
Sure. And so where did these grants come from? Like, how did, if someone out there is interested in funding a project through like pursuing, like maybe finding a grant to help fund the project? Like where would they look?
Well, I don't know. In the States, I don't know. But in Canada, we have there's the Canada Council, there's local institutions, there's Alberta Foundation for the Arts. That's what I applied for. There's a lot of stuff if you go looking, but it was my first successful grant. So I'm tentative to sort of give my feedback or advice on grant writing,
Sure.
because it's only it's hard to say. Maybe it was just a stroke of luck. I don't know, but I like to think that I had done it right as well as far as the application goes. But I think there's a big luck of the draw. I think part of it was the fact that it was an interesting, unique project. Like, it wasn't just another sort of jazz quartet or piano and clarinet or whatever. It was kind of
right.
It was kind of different, and I think that helps. But the granting organizations, I honestly don't know what there is in the States. I don't know if that exists.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a similar thing though. So I mean, you were looking at there's like national level grants. There are like regional foundations. There are local institutions. I mean, it's the same process. It's just stick a different name on it for whatever town or city or state or whatever it is you live in. That's really interesting. And and another thing for folks that are watching that I think is really interesting and very savvy. There's a siren going to go by here. That's great, awesome. But so my dog's like looking around like bugging out.
So was I.
What's going on? So yeah, it's just I had Indian food for lunch. No kidding. But what's interesting for folks that are watching and that I think is interesting is that you didn't just go through you didn't depend on one thing to make sure this project happened. I mean, you were looking for grants. You did a Kickstarter or Indiegogo or some kind of crowdfunding campaign, and then you did and then afterwards to actually promote it, you actually had a performance. There were multiple things here to kind of raising money, but B, and also awareness around the project, and just keeping people in the loop. Anybody that donated to a crowdfunding thing, then you could keep them in the loop with the project. They knew what was going on. They got maybe a sense of ownership with the project. Like, oh, I supported this. I want to see how it's going.
And with crowdfunding, that's what I think is okay about. I mentioned some people think it's a little bit in poor taste to solicit your own friends and family and audience or whatever for that kind of thing. But I don't think so either. And the thing that I thought is that a lot of my friends, if they were to release a project like this, I'd be happy to pitch in $20, $40.
Why wouldn't
you? I have, and I actually, this is the CD. I don't know if I showed you, but
there's
the actual disc but to go to an event, get a ticket to an event, and get a CD and whatever else for $20 or whatever it was. I mean, that's a pretty reasonable night out, and I think that everyone really enjoyed themselves, and it was a lot of fun. And the fact that it got the CD for it, I mean, to be honest, this isn't the next Katy Perry album. I'm not raking in the dough.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just it was a fun way to get it out there and have people enjoy it. I still have a lot of copies to sell, which is great. I can send people to iTunes if they'd rather listen that way. But the release party was fun, and I think Kickstarter was actually a lot of fun to do. It was exciting and got people interested. And I don't know, I would suggest it, but don't use it for capital expenses. I find that so tacky when people put up a Kickstarter to buy themselves a new clarinet or whatever. That's not. Oh right,
yeah. I mean, it's
No. Yeah. You want Kickstarter to me, and even Indiegogo and things, use them for things that give back in some way. Let's say you kick into a Kickstarter campaign. You want to get a CD at the end. You want to get a ticket to an event. You want to get I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
You should get something. It shouldn't be like, I'm going to give $50 so Sean can go buy a new clarinet. Why doesn't Sean get a job?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's like everybody. I mean, everybody at some point has gotten that seeing it pop on their news feed of I got into this festival in Germany. Help me pay for the plane ticket.
Yeah, I don't know. Unless you can turn it into a way to create something interesting. There's an opportunity maybe there, right?
Right. Actually, who's to say what other people think is valuable? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I did see one actually. This girl had posted a thing where she said, "I'm an artist and I want to go to whatever conference it was, some artist conference." And so basically, what she said is that if you pitch in, I will send you, I don't know, some sort of you got one of her art prints, and it was
Mm-hmm.
signed, and then also you got like access to some updated blog while she was there, and some people even who were also going to be at the same conference got to come get a portrait done by her at the event. So there was a way to turn that into an opportunity. But
Right.
if she just said everyone pitch in $6 so I can buy a plane ticket, I mean, not really. I don't know. It doesn't have the same feel to it. It's not giving back. There's nothing.
Right. It doesn't necessarily bring value back to the contributor, the person that's supporting it.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. I mean, it's I mean, I know several people. I mean, I have plenty of people that have done various recording things, and I think that's a really interesting approach you did, and I think a lot of folks that are tuning in here can take something away from kind of diversifying and getting creative with how they fund and pursue these projects. So I think that's really great. So Sean, we're getting into like kind of the final stretch here. Where can people learn more about what you have going on, and where can they learn more?
Well, before we do that, actually, I just want to say one more thing about the CD because
Oh,
one
please.
of your first questions we didn't really address. So I think you'd asked something about like why did you want to do a CD or something like that, and it's funny because I'd always wanted to record an album ever since I was starting in music, but the idea of a CD sort of died right at the end of my undergrad, and so
Right.
I gave up on the idea years because for some reason it didn't feel the same to me to just make an iTunes digital album. I didn't want that for some reason, even though I wouldn't buy a CD myself anymore, really, to be honest.
Right.
But I don't know. At one point, I was just like, it's something I've always wanted to do. So I did it. And the concept of the dream songs, basically, what ended up happening is that we recorded the Chick Corea children's songs.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with this is that people started to ask why I was recording a children's, and it's not my fault that that's Chick Corea's deal. And all the pieces were about people from his childhood. But something else we found is that not all the pieces worked for the instrumentation, and a lot of people had just sort of recorded them verbatim and then been done. So in order to add a little bit of improv and keep it interesting, some of them were cut, some of them weren't even really arranged at all, and so they're kind of put out of order. But then I sort of decided, well, why don't they be dreams? And then so the first song is called Truman Sleeps, and that's by Philip Glass.
Okay. Yep.
And that's just like figuratively, that's someone falling asleep, and then he has these 12 dreams, and he wakes up to opening, and that's kind of what ties it all together. That's why I'm not playing on the first and last track, is because the dreamer hasn't fallen asleep yet or whatever. And I don't know, the dream element kind of goes into it a lot. I mean, that's why there's also a segue between tracks 1 and 2, is you never remember the exact moment you fall asleep. So
Right.
sort of, I don't know, there was a lot of sort of artistic
No,
programming there.
that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, and number 15 and 10 actually blend together. The last note of 15 resolves up to 10 in that way too. And live, actually, a lot of them blend together and just improv sake. And live, I mean, some of these are 10 minutes long, even though they're only a minute on the CD. So
Sure.
I don't know, there's actually a fair amount of programming that went into it, but I don't expect anyone to pick it up having just listened to it. And it is a little shorter. I mean, it's 13 tracks. It's about half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I thought about that is that, like, well, I want everything to be great, so I got pretty in there with the editing, and nothing that I didn't want on there, as far as takes I didn't really like or whatever aren't there. And also, I just figured 13 ideas is enough, anyways, and the instrumentation didn't really warrant a full hour-long disc. It's just not maybe engaging enough. So something light, something quick, something I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's how a lot of those old school jazz albums were. They're half an hour long, a lot of them. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So, anyway, as far as other things I'm doing, I mean, if people check out the album, I'd be so happy if they listen to it on Spotify and iTunes. Of course, it's actually buy a copy, because instead of a penny, I get a few dollars, which helps to go towards the next thing. And if you have feedback about it, it's amazing how little feedback you get from a project like this. I mean, people listen to it, but you never really hear too much about it. So that's kind of cool. Also, if you want to check out Clarineat, that's my podcast. There's some episodes on there that are relevant to you, whether or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to many of them. Yeah, I mean, they're not all always like just clarinet. So I think
no, and there's some that are specifically actually not, like the one with Eddie Modic Research. I think that's one every musician should listen to. That's about a headphone product. Actually, these are Eddie Modic headphones right here.
Oh, there you
Really
go.
cool. And so are these actually. But yeah, I've been a huge
And you
fan of
have your
that.
Clarineat swag on your shirt,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is my Clarineat sort of shirt here, and I got my little. I was going to show you this too, just my little print materials I've done up. It's kind of cool.
Very cool.
But anyways, yeah, no, that's the two big things for me right now. I've got the CD, which I'm hoping to get out to some radio stations and stuff at some point, but it's been self-released, and all these things are just so much work.
Yeah, I understand. I'm in the
Hard to
process
find
of
the
this book.
time.
I totally understand.
Yeah, how's that going?
Oh, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's a very large project, which I think you can understand. Um,
Absolutely.
so but it's going well. You know, it's funny. A lot of the things you're saying are like literally the exact same thing. It's like, yeah, you know, you do this. There's this first process, and then you have to do this editing, and then you go back for this editing. And it's like that's the exact same thing with a book or an album, whatever it is. So that's
Yeah.
everything you're talking about is like, I know. Like I hope I can get to the end of it. I'm getting there. We're getting there. Yeah,
Cool.
so I'll link to all of these items in the show notes on my site at musician's guide to hustling.com/Sean-Perrin. I'll put it there. And Sean, do you have any last words you want to leave with the audience while you have the little platform, while you have the audience here?
No, I think that's good. Check clarineat.com and search Dream Songs on iTunes. That's it.
Great, Sean. Thanks so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.